Hi there guys, my name is Cortland Sidzik, and in this YouTube video I will be discussing the method of analysis that I used to examine my rhetorical artifact and how I contributed to rhetorical theory. My artifact in the first place was an album titled Illmatic by a rapper named Nas. It came out on April 19th, 1994, and it was not well received at first, but only 6 years later it went platinum, and many of its albums to follow that have been very successful. I am analyzing this artifact for two reasons. Number one, the fact that it was able to inspire so many people who heard the album to rap or continue that dream in a similar fashion that Nas did. And two, because not only did this album hit and appeal to his target audience, but it also appealed to a wide audience as well. The reasons behind this were unclear until I decided to examine the artifact through neo-aristotelian criticism. At first, I tried to do it through pentad and ratios. However, I realized that the motivations on behalf of Nas for creating Illmatic, which is what the pentad and ratios seeks to identify, had already been clearly stated in several documentaries that he has featured in and many articles that he has been featured in. So that wasn't going to be very helpful, and it wasn't going to contribute a lot to a rhetorical theory, so I decided to examine it through neo-aristotelian criticism. Now, neo-aristotelian criticism is concerned with the effects of a single speaker oratory on a specific audience. Now, although this isn't a public address, the fact that it is still speech and it's still being addressed to the public, not necessarily live, but it's still being addressed to the public, is the reasons why I tended to do this. And not only was it intended for a target audience, which aids in criticizing an artifact through neo-aristotelian criticism, but it also reached multiple audiences, which neo-aristotelian criticism can give you facts and reasons behind why that happened. So, in analyzing my artifact, Illmatic, I realized, A, it inspired so many people after, because a lot of the elements that he chose to write about are very relatable. Now, although they are specific to New York kids growing up in the project, specifically Queensbridge, the ideals and perceptions behind them are embodied by many people in the U.S. For example, trying to make the best out of a bad situation, or trying to still enjoy a life even though there's danger all around you, or trying to tear down hate in the face of determination and trying to succeed. These are all values that we all embody, whether or not our circumstance does vary from person to person. 2. The messages and the specific content that he speaks about was very new. It was new in the sense that people hadn't yet heard about it, although they knew it happened. The perceptions in underprivileged, low-income neighborhoods, specifically the projects, are very bad, but they were never very detailed. So Nas wanted to give you what the streets felt like, what the streets smelled like, and what they tasted like. He wanted it to be proof that he was there, and it conveyed this information in such a visceral, detailed way that people listened to it, and it gave off this coolness factor. It took a while to assume that, but it did. And the coolness factor came from the fact that people didn't know this happened, or that if they did, it wasn't detailed and it wasn't put in a way that made it seem cool, and hyper-masculine. Going on from there, when I was examining the album, another reason why it was so popular among so many people was the fact that it was tailored to a target audience, and that target audience wasn't quite defined or developed yet. The hip-hop and music genre was so young and in such a biblical foundation stage that it still had room for imprint and it still had room for influence. So, because of the new style of music that Nas created by putting very intricate, complex, expansive vocabulary words over smooth beat rhyme schemes that anyone could keep up with, made it very crisp. That made it very cool, and it made it very interesting to listen to. I myself am a very avid listener of Nas, and I love his work, as do many other people, and many rappers today that may, in some respects, have more success than Nas have modeled themselves after Nas. Nas is, and some people refer to him as a god of hip-hop. I refuse to refer to him more of as a king That would be my interpretation. But in going through this analysis, I really enjoyed this paper. It was very interesting to write about. I really enjoyed finally understanding why it appealed to people that were similar to me, why white males were listening such a dangerous, visceral message, and why that appealed to a wide audience. His use of ethos was provided by the fact that he grew up in Queensbridge. He used pathos and awakened a ton of emotion, whether it was sadness, hope, anger, fear, or pride, through different messages that he sent on his 10-track album. First, it starts out with him trying to hustle in the streets even though he has bigger dreams. So there you see that people have to sacrifice things in order to make it where they are, given their current circumstance. Or you have the song Life's a Bitch, and it just simply states that the motivations behind a lot of people's desires to make it big and to be completely successful are deeply rooted in our childhood and our friends and family that surround us. For instance, Nas had his motivations born through his mother, who intended to raise him right as an honest man in an area where few existed, and he did that. He used those values and he brought them to the rap music scene where none of those values were really seen. Although he was talking about drug dealing and everything, it was a means to a justifiable end. And I think that's what most people can relate with. So in analyzing this through his neo-aristotelian criticism, Nas was able to advance his message and put emphasis on his words, context, and become successful because A, his new rhymes provided a coolness factor and his style and delivery were like none other. B, the fact that the East Coast had not been galvanized yet and was really looking for an anchor for that new music genre. C, the music genre itself was very, very young, so it could be still shaped and formed based upon who produced music that became very, very popular. D, white young males saw it as a very relatable item, even though the specific content was not relatable. It was the ideals and perceptions behind it that held. And E, well, I think that every album has some sort of bias built into it that people accept or listen to, and people try to search for just because it's similar to them and they know that they're going to like it. So I believe that those are the reasons behind why this paper did what it did. In analyzing it, I used 12 sources. I used 5 peer-reviewed, and I used 7 sources online. I used sources such as The Source, which is a huge magazine critic article company. And I also used Billboard.com. I used things such as Complex, AllMusic. I used a lot of critic sites for music and literature in that genre. So, and every single one had a good thing to say. So, without further ado, you already have my paper. Believe I'm done. Enjoy.